Most urban legends are harmless, just strange rituals people share online for fun. But there's one rule everyone repeats about the elevator dame. If you reach the final floor and a woman enters the elevator, do not look at her, do not speak to her, and whatever you do not follow her when she leaves. I learned about that rule a little too late. It started on a quiet Thursday night. I was alone in my apartment, scrolling through forums the way people do when they're bored and avoiding sleep. Random threads, urban legends, paranormal challenges. That's where I found it. A post titled, "The Elevator Game: How to Reach the Other Side." Normally, I ignore things like that, but the post was unusually detailed. It explained a ritual you could perform inside an elevator to supposedly reach another world. The instructions were precise. You had to enter an elevator in a building with at least 10 floors. You had to ride it alone, and you had to press the floors in a specific sequence. If you did it correctly, something strange would happen. Most people in the comments were laughing at it, but a few replies were different. They weren't joking. They were warning people not to try it. One comment caught my attention. It simply said, "If the elevator stops on the 13th floor, do not look at the woman." At first, I assumed it was just part of the story, but curiosity has a strange way of growing the more you try to ignore it, and the building I lived in happened to have something interesting: 12 floors and an elevator. I remember standing in my kitchen that night thinking about it. It was ridiculous, just an internet myth, but part of me wanted to see what would happen. So around midnight, I grabbed my phone and went downstairs. The lobby was empty. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above the tiled floor. The security desk was dark, the guard probably asleep somewhere in the back room. The elevator doors stood quietly at the end of the hallway, closed, waiting. I pressed the call button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the motor above me rumbled softly, and the doors slid open. The elevator was empty. I stepped inside. The metal walls reflected the harsh ceiling light, making the small space feel colder than it should. I pulled up the instructions on my phone. The sequence looked strange. Floor 4, then 2, then 6, then 2 again, then 10, then 5, and finally 1. It sounded like nonsense, but I followed it exactly. The elevator moved smoothly at first. Floor 4, the doors opened. No one there. They closed again. Floor 2, still empty. Everything felt completely normal. Too normal. The quiet hum of the elevator motor echoed softly in the narrow space. My reflection in the metal walls looked slightly distorted, stretched by the brushed steel. Floor 6, Floor 2 again, Floor 10. By the time I pressed the button for 5, I felt something strange creeping into the air. Not fear exactly, just awareness, like the building around me had suddenly become very quiet. When the elevator stopped at Floor 5, the doors opened slowly, and someone stepped inside. A woman. She looked completely normal, mid-30s maybe, dark hair tied back loosely, gray coat. She didn't look at me. She just walked in and stood beside the panel of buttons. My heart skipped for a second, because I suddenly remembered the rule from the forum. If a woman enters, do not acknowledge her. I kept my eyes fixed straight ahead, trying not to look at her reflection in the metal wall. The elevator doors closed, and the car began moving again. The instructions said something important about this moment. If the ritual worked, the elevator would no longer go where you told it to. It would take you somewhere else, somewhere that shouldn't exist. I watched the numbers above the door. 6, 7, 8. The woman beside me hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but I could feel something strange about her presence, like the air around her was colder, like the elevator had suddenly become smaller. The display reached 12, the highest floor in the building. Normally, the elevator would stop, the doors would open, but they didn't. Instead, the number changed. 13. The elevator slowed to a stop. My chest tightened, because my building didn't have a 13th floor.
and slowly, the doors began to open. The hallway outside was dark. Not dim, not poorly lit, just dark. Like the lights beyond the elevator simply didn't exist. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost curious. "Are you coming?" Every instinct in my body told me not to respond. The instructions had been very clear: do not speak to her. So I stayed silent. The woman turned her head slightly. I could feel her eyes on me even though I refused to look. Then she stepped out into the darkness of the 13th floor. The elevator doors stayed open, waiting. And I remembered the final rule from the forum: whatever you do, do not follow her when she leaves. But standing there in that silent elevator, staring into a floor that shouldn't exist, I realized something that made my stomach drop. Because the elevator buttons weren't responding anymore, and the doors weren't closing, which meant there was only one way to leave. I had to step onto the 13th floor.
The elevator doors stayed open. The hallway outside was completely dark. Not the kind of darkness you see when lights are turned off. This felt deeper, like the space beyond the elevator wasn't fully there. I stood frozen, staring into it. The instructions from the forum echoed in my mind. Do not follow her when she leaves. But something else was wrong. I pressed the button for 1. Nothing happened. I pressed 12. Still nothing. The panel lights flickered once, then went dead. The elevator wasn't responding, which meant the only way out was the 13th floor. I stepped forward slowly. The moment my foot crossed the elevator threshold, the air changed. It felt colder, heavier, like the building itself had aged decades in a single step. Behind me, the elevator doors slid shut with a quiet metallic sound. I turned quickly. The display above the door was gone. No numbers, no lights, just a blank metal surface. The elevator had vanished into the wall like it had never existed. And suddenly I understood something the forum post never mentioned. You don't leave the elevator game the same way you entered it. The hallway stretched out ahead of me. It looked similar to the floors below. Same long corridor, same apartment doors, but everything was wrong in small ways. The lights flickered dimly. The carpet was stained and torn. The walls looked older, cracked like they had been abandoned for years. And every door had a number on it, but none of the numbers made sense. 1301, 1302, 1303. This floor shouldn't exist, but it had apartments, a lot of them. I walked slowly down the hallway. The silence felt oppressive. No sounds of televisions, no footsteps, no voices, just the faint buzzing of dying fluorescent lights. And then I heard something behind me. Footsteps, slow, soft, following me. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too. My stomach tightened, because I already knew who it was, the woman. The instructions had warned me about her. Do not look at her. But now she was behind me in the hallway, somewhere in the darkness, watching. I could feel it, like eyes pressing against the back of my neck. Then her voice came again, soft, almost friendly. You're not supposed to be here. I said nothing. The silence stretched for seconds. Then her footsteps started again, closer this time, slowly approaching me. I kept my eyes fixed forward. Every instinct told me to turn around, but the rule was clear: do not look at her. She stopped only a few feet behind me, close enough that I could hear her breathing. It sounded wrong somehow, too slow, too calm. Then she spoke again. You pressed the sequence correctly. Her voice sounded curious, almost impressed. But you made a mistake. My throat tightened, because I hadn't spoken a single word, and somehow she knew. I heard her take one more step forward, right behind me now. So many people come here, she whispered. They always want to see the other side.
Her voice dropped lower, but they never understand the rules. Something creaked nearby. One of the apartment doors down the hallway slowly opened, just a few inches. Inside was complete darkness. Then another door opened, then another. All along the hallway, doors began to crack open slightly, like something inside them had been waiting, watching. The woman behind me laughed softly. "You're lucky," she said. "Most of them opened their doors immediately." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "What's inside them?" I asked before I could stop myself. The hallway fell silent, and I immediately realized what I had done. I had broken the second rule: do not speak to her. For several seconds, she didn't answer. Then I felt something brush lightly against my shoulder. Her voice came right next to my ear. "You weren't supposed to talk." The air around me suddenly felt much colder, and the doors down the hallway began opening wider. Slowly, quietly, something moved inside one of the apartments, a shape shifting in the darkness, then another, then another. The woman chuckled softly. "They heard you." My heart started racing. "What happens now?" I whispered. For the first time, her voice sounded almost sympathetic. "Now they know you're real." The hallway lights flickered violently, and suddenly I heard something else, a familiar mechanical hum, the elevator. At the far end of the corridor, the elevator doors slowly opened. Bright lights spilled out into the dark hallway. The woman stepped back slightly. "You can still try," she said softly. I didn't wait and ran, past the half-open apartment doors, past the shifting shadows inside them. Something moved quickly in one of the doorways as I passed, long fingers stretching towards the hallway. I ran faster. The elevator doors were still open, waiting. I jumped inside and slammed the button for one. The doors closed instantly. The elevator dropped rapidly. Floor numbers appeared above the door. 12, 13, 14, 15. Everything felt normal again. Too normal. When the doors finally opened in the lobby, the fluorescent lights looked painfully bright. The building was quiet, exactly like it had been before. I walked outside without looking back. For a while, I thought I had escaped, but a few nights later, something strange happened. I tried to call my sister. The phone rang and rang and rang. Then she finally answered. Her voice sounded confused. "Who is this?" "It's me," I said. Silence. Then she spoke again. "You sound like her, but she disappeared 2 days ago." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" Another pause. "You're not funny." "I'm serious," she said. "The police were here this morning. They said you vanished inside the elevator." I slowly turned toward the street behind me. Something felt wrong. The city looked normal, but there were no cars moving, no people walking, no sounds, just wind and distant empty buildings. Then I noticed something even worse. Across the street, an elevator door slowly slid open, and standing inside it was the woman, watching me, smiling. "You didn't leave," she said softly. "This is just another floor." And somewhere behind me, apartment doors began opening.